Good day. Welcome from sunny Sarasota, Florida. I'm Denise Davis Cotton, along with my colleague Betty Belanis from Washington, D.C., the Smithsonian Folklife Center, and we will be with you today. So I bring you greetings from Florida first, because I'm up first, and I am the director of the Florida Center for Partnerships for Arts Integrated Teaching, better known as the PAINT Center, located in Sarasota, Florida, at the University of South Florida, where educators are at the heart of paint. And they bring great leadership, a willing heart, and a positive attitude. And together with our paint program, we all have a desire to make a difference. And I'm quite sure that's why you're here too. Let me give you a little information about paint. Paint is a statewide center that provides an infrastructure for the university to develop partnerships that support arts integrated teaching. PAINT works with pre-service teachers and teachers in professional development or practicing professional teachers to increase their capacity to deliver high quality instruction that integrates the arts into the classrooms. And I am so delighted that PAINT is an integral part of the state in this endeavor. So while he's pulling up the slide that talks about our REACH project, PAINT supports a high quality arts integrated teaching in our programs through English, language arts, math, science, social studies, um, language arts, visual arts for our teachers across the state, and with our REACH program, our teachers across the country. And if you go to the next slide, please. Our goals and objectives for the program are to ensure that we, through REACH, which means race, equity, arts, and cultural history, expand our opportunity to network with Art Schools Network, the Smithsonian, and various partners across the country so that we can ensure that we address the topics of race, equity, arts, and cultural history. The aim of the REACH system is to create national professional arts learning communities designed to improve the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities to integrate the arts in classrooms and high poverty communities and ways to expand and explore how we understand our students through their difference and differing abilities. Next slide, please. So race, equity, arts, and cultural history, REACH, is a 5-year program that is funded by the Department of Education. We have 14 partners, including Betty, who will talk about the Smithsonian's role, the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage. And we provide collaborative evidence-based methodologies, practices, and programs through a sustained professional development that is coordinated with our national partners, our local school districts, our superintendents, our principals, to ensure that we have to the forefront all of those activities that teachers really want to ensure that they bring and provide to the classroom with our teachers and teaching artists. Next slide, please. So through the PAINT program, we develop a system whereby we try to reach, and I think we have surpassed that in year 2. We're in year 2 of a 5-year program, 4,000 REACH participants. And we have a framework, which I'll talk about in a few moments. But through our framework, we have 2 Saturday live professional developments, 2 virtual professional developments, arts coaching provided for our national teachers in schools across the country, our teaching residencies for our schools located in our demonstration school sites of Florida, Chicago, Illinois, and where's our other location? In Flint, Michigan. We recruit and identified a set number of teachers and teaching artists in our schools in Florida, Michigan, and Illinois, which make up our Group 1 and Group 2 schools, which I'll talk about later. Next slide, please. So the lesson plans and professional development that we provide are a part of what we've created as a truth framework: teach, reach, unite, transform, and heal. And in our truth framework and our BIRAC teaching spiral, we use tools to support a reflective model for professional development to ensure that we are creating an inclusive and equitable learning environments for our students. We believe that students should be at the center of our learning, so we build those inclusive relationships across cultures. For example, on our teach level of our truth framework, we ensure that the teachers reflect upon how they challenge their deficit assumptions. For example, how do they address their personal or institutional perceptions of the students they are teaching? How do they cultivate a culture whereby we could be more inclusive instead of exclusive of the child's experience? How does a teacher welcome difference? How does a teacher and teaching artist, in our case, break the barriers that block them from access and opportunity to learning? How does a teacher or teaching artist recognize the reality that we all must adjust and adapt inclusive practices and equitable practices so that we all can discover new experiences in the teaching and learning environment? Thereby, the teacher introduces new curriculum programs that elevate awareness and advance the integrity of the students' experience, lived experiences, practices, customs, and heritage. Next slide, please. So as we look at the truth framework and we look at the BIRAC teaching spiral, it brings me to an understanding of what arts integration is. And I would like to give you some context. At the Florida Center for Partnerships for Arts Integrated Teaching, or the PAINT Center, we define arts integration as a diversity of knowledge, programs, experiences, and aspirations that bring meaning to ideas and content through the arts and human interactions. So let's reflect upon that with the next slide, please. This brings me to understanding how we can improve access, especially for our most challenging and minoritized and marginalized groups. During our sessions, we address two major questions. Those prevailing questions are: will America's future cultural landscape represent diverse programs and include diverse populations or perspectives? And number two, why should we care? It's really important and empowering and encouraging to raise these questions to our teachers and our teaching artists so that they can connect with each other as teachers and teaching artists across the school, in their environment, to answer and reflect upon a poem that I love by Langston Hughes, to communicate the obvious and the unexamined. And the poem is We Wear the Mask. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile, with torn and bleeding hearts we smile and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile. But oh, great Christ, our Christ, to thee from tortured souls arise. We sing, but oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet and long the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask. We wear the mask conveys understanding of conscious alienation, highlighted by a sense of belonging along the path of exploitation. We see the mask of our students. We take off the mask of our students. We believe that we have been called to do the work of Reach, to elevate the imagery of the mask in the picture that you see on the screen of hope, of fortitude, and the spirit of belonging, the spirit of valuing human interactions in arts learning. Where are our students in spaces where they have been denied, neglected, or overlooked? Next slide, please. So as we build our lessons, we build them based upon the truth framework and the BIRAC teaching spiral. We build it to build student agency. We build them with the understanding of how do teachers and teaching artists shift their thinking to be comfortable with acknowledging the differences, identifying the differences, and addressing students differently so that all students who sit before every teacher in our classrooms are able to learn, participate, and are welcomed as valuable contributors in the classroom experience. Next slide, please. So in one of our PD sessions, we took a deep dive into defining equity. And we also presented the same session to superintendents and principals and administrators of school districts across the country so that they could understand their commitment to equity and break down the barriers of equity challenges. Is equity just a compliance task based upon the school board or the school district? Or is it a part of a whole person and a whole system that is linked to culture, linked to identity, and linked to healing, which is the highest level of the truth framework? Hence, we look at approaching equity through arts integration as an equity pedagogy. Next slide, please. In another PD, we looked at what is culture and how does culture live in our society. We examine culture and what makes people special or unique, and how do we elevate it. One session, we had a tap dance lesson with rhythm and expressive language and call and response. And we talked about the culture of the African American, the culture of peoples who came from different backgrounds into America and who were marginalized because of race and or ethnicity. So we discovered ways to communicate in and through the arts. We communicate with communities, and we provide a safe space that encourages not only professional development, but personal development, self-expression, and community engagement. And in our next slide, as we move along, which is the purpose of today's session, we concentrate on a very important aspect and institute in all our communities: museums, our museum studies. And the purpose of our museum studies and research is to make sure that we know how to build a community-centered environment through the museums in our neighborhood. Do we know the history? Do we examine cultural arts? Do we look at the content? Do we have a shared vocabulary? For example, 3 weeks ago, we took a group of students. Sarasota is the home of the circus. We took them to the Circus Museum, which is the heart of the circus. These were 5th and 6th graders who had no idea of the origins of the circus in their community. We make sure that we try to include content and practices in Reach that are culturally inclusive, culturally responsive, and culturally engaged in our educational experience. So now I want to take you to Montgomery, Alabama, which is the first year of our museum studies, which is on the next slide. There were 21 educators, including 8 university professors from the University of South Florida, who journeyed last summer to Montgomery, Alabama. During that experience, they learned that Montgomery, Alabama is the cradle of American civil rights movement. And they saw it all over the city. They learned more about the movement. They reflected on Montgomery's role in our nation's history so that our professors, our teachers, and our teaching artists on the project could develop best ways to teach lessons for today's students of our nation's history. Our keynote presenters were Dr. Quentin Ross, who coined the phrase communiversity, a community of people surrounding Alabama State University, which is my alma mater. Retired Magistrate Judge Vanzetta Penn, who talked about life beyond Brown versus Board of Education in today's America. And Harvard Fellow and professor at the John Jay College of Law at CUNY University, Gloria Brown Marshall. These wonderful people gave us rich histories and an understanding of how we can collectively engage and identify ways in which we could tell the whole history within our American history and culture, especially in Montgomery, Alabama. So our teachers and teaching artists developed new relationships and were able to talk within their focus groups about ways that they could take these studies back to their schools. Next slide, please. During our time in Montgomery, late July of last year, we visited several museums and monuments and historical sites around the city, including Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, where we amplified the voices and songs of the civil rights movement right at Dr. Martin Luther King's church, where he began his career. That session was facilitated by Wanda Battle, who is an excellent facilitator. She led the group in freedom songs and quotes and historical narratives and showed us different ways in which we can embrace and engage this period by using the arts in classrooms. In fact, the hotel that we were staying in at that time in Montgomery was near a building where enslaved Africans were warehoused before they were taken to the market. And right outside Dexter Avenue Baptist Church is a post where the slaves were chained, and it's still there today. We also attended the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Freedom Rights Museum on the site of the Greyhound bus station, where the group became familiar with the full extent of Montgomery's importance to the civil rights movement. Next slide, please. So I think one of the most piercing and emotive experiences was at Equal Justice Initiative's Legacy Museum and Memorial. Those experiences provided ways to introduce the group to what students might learn about the civil rights movement through imagery, visualization, stories told in different and more engaging and more complete ways than the erased or altered histories in our textbooks. For instance, the simulation of the slave voyage when you walk into the Legacy Museum and offering advertisements that offered slaves for sale, among other features, were highlighted to explain the severity of this experience. And on our next slide, you will see a picture of some of the learnings from the past, where one professor wrote, part of the motivation for the trip was to guide teachers on how to critically process content related to the civil rights movement and related historical events. George Freeman said that in addition to the content, the style in which information is presented can be equally transformative. The museum offered a model for engaging different mediums, even art forms, as a way to help people connect to and understand the horrors of slavery while capturing the humanity of those enslaved. So if you move in advance to the next slide, you will see some of the artifacts from the historical narratives from the museum, the soil that came from the grounds on which our ancestors or the enslaved were lynched, one of the advertisements of that time. Next slide, please. This experience was life-changing. It was life-changing in that the group that visited the museum studies were inspired more to do research, to learn more independently, and to, as in our captured in our focus group, and to explain ways in which our students are able to find complete history and those experiences that we saw in Montgomery. And while we were there were floods of classrooms and from across the country. And what surprised me, and I don't know why I was surprised, was that many of the visitors at the museums, most were not people of color. The emotion, the understanding, the history that was taught, that was brought to light through families who brought their children, through mothers who brought their daughters, through fathers who brought their sons, of course, was a life-changing experience to develop that understanding of this era in American history. Next slide, please. So one person defined the experience as surreal. And she said it was surreal because you're meeting people who are related to people we have read about. Because there are people still in Montgomery, and I happen to be from Montgomery, Alabama, who are still alive to tell the stories. It puts you in a place of history. And one of the people on the trip said, it made me feel a sense of responsibility. Responsibility for carrying on a legacy just by being in a place that holds so much bad history, but also a place that is like home to where the civil rights movement was born. Other sites in Montgomery that the participants visited included, of course, the Civil Rights Memorial Center at the Southern Poverty Law Center, the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, the Rosa Parks Museum, and the Mothers of Gynecology Monument and the Freedom Rights Movement. Next slide, please. This was an example of a piece, and I captured this from the New York Times because we could not take pictures in the museum, but it tells the story of systemic racism, the story of slavery, and the horrors of slavery. Next slide, please. So, of course, they're heroes in the civil rights movement, and the gentleman that you see holding the number of his arrest just happens to be my uncle. And this is a picture that we all have held in our home for a long time. And he's on the last picture with Rosa Parks and E.D. Nixon, who helped raise me at the time, and Rosa Parks, who was our neighbor. These are the heroes of the movement. They're your uncle, your aunt, your cousin, They're your next door neighbor. These people still live in Montgomery, Alabama, to tell the story of the history, to tell the story of the struggle. Next slide, please. And then there's a reflection room where you can understand the power of unity. In the face of pain, there is great strength. Next slide, please. So this is the end of my portion, but what the takeaway was from the group was we can develop exhibit-related curricula because the stories are told in our museums. In this case, it's Montgomery, Alabama. And I will be going back to take more groups of students, high school students, to the EJI Institute to continue on developing an understanding of race, equity, arts, and cultural history. With that, I pass the baton on to Betty Belanis. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Could I have the next slide, please? So I worked with Denise and her team and our team at the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage to put together this year's museum experience in Washington, D.C. And I had some big shoes to fill, as you can see, because Denise put together such an amazing experience in Montgomery. It was a little bit different in Washington, D.C. And before I tell you about our experience in Washington, D.C., I just wanted to say that I see that we have one question in our list of questions so far. If you have other questions, please feel free to pop those in, and we will be leaving a time for answering questions at the end. So some of the same group came to Washington, D.C. You see us on their rooftop here for a 4-day experience in Washington during the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. And we also visited some of the museums. And this just happened a few weeks ago, so we're still kind of processing the whole experience. But it was an amazing experience. So I'm going to just outline it for you a little bit here. Next slide, please. So our focus was on one of the Smithsonian Folklife Festival programs this year was called Creative Encounters, Living Religions in the U.S. And we thought this would be a really good focus for the experience, the museum visit to Washington, D.C., because religion is such a disputed subject, can be, something that many teachers are wondering how they can teach anything about religion in the classroom. So we focused on that festival experience, as well as going to a couple of the Smithsonian museums with related exhibitions. Next slide, please. So the structure of the experience was we had time every morning in a classroom setting, which was actually our offices in Capitol Gallery in Washington, D.C. And then we went out to the different museums or to the festival, and we had some lecture time, we had reflection time, and we also had a wonderful pairing that Dr. Davis Cotton put together of pairing people for reflection every day. So we both had that classroom time, those one-on-ones, and also visiting the festival and the museums. Next slide, please. So our first day, we spent most of the day in the classroom, actually, getting to know one another or reacquainting with each other. And we also had a wonderful presentation on from Dr. Diana Njai on the Will to Adorn project, which is a project that 10-year project that she worked on in our at our center, and it fit in perfectly with a presentation that we had on head wraps from Mama Rashida from Baltimore. And we all got to make our own head wraps and reflect on adornment and dress and how it fits into religion. And it was very extremely moving experience that day. Next slide, please. The second day, we took a trip to the National Museum of African American History and Culture. We all went to see one fairly small exhibit, but really a meaningful exhibit if you get a chance to see it, which is called Speared in the Dark. And it did focus on religion and on some very well-known personalities and their choices of African American personalities and their choices of religion and how they came about them. And then people had time to just explore the museum. And I know if you've been to the museum, you know there's a lot to explore there. The group was especially taken, I think, with the Afrofuturisms exhibit that is currently there. So if you're in Washington for the conference, or if you live in Washington and haven't seen those two exhibits, we really highly recommend those. Next slide, please. Then we did get to spend not as much time as we would have wanted, but weather kind of intervened at the Smithsonian Folklife Festival at the Encounters, at the Creative Encounters program, which brought people from the Washington, D.C. area, from Baltimore, from Tennessee, from New Mexico, from a lot of different places to talk about how they creatively express their religion. So the participants got to talk to the people who were there demonstrating their crafts, their arts, their foodways, their storytelling. They got to meet mandala makers and sawdust carpet maker from Guatemala originally, and altar makers, and it was really, you know, the festival is very multi-sensory. So, but it was also a wonderful time for people to have what we call cultural conversations with the participants from the festival. Next slide, please. And then the next day, we spent some time at the National Museum of the American Indian in their education space, which is called Imaginations. And if you haven't been there, you should check that out too. And to a couple of the exhibits, the Americans exhibit and the Red is Beautiful exhibit. And again, emphasizing that that emphasis on religion and how these exhibitions that have a lot of art work and popular culture work and you know, contemporary artwork have, you know, reflect religion, and being able to connect all that between the different museums and the festival. Next slide, please. So the outcomes that we're hoping for is the participants will be working on lesson plans and other reflections that will go into the whole reach eventually on the website. And Denise will talk a little bit about more about when I'm done about how you might be able to get involved and how you can tie into some of this information. But one of the things that we did want to tie into was Smithsonian Learning Lab, which many of you know about, many of you have used, and we hope that it will become a tool for this. I actually put together a collection. The link is there, and I'm hoping these slides will be available afterwards so that you can get some of the information we've been talking about. But I did a Smithsonian Learning Lab collection based on our trip to Montgomery and relating that to artifacts that you can find digitally around the Smithsonian. So, we're hoping that will become a tool along with the other tools that we have available. Next slide, please. So these are just a couple of the reflections. Like I said, we're still processing all the information, putting together some little video clips and photographs that that we haven't had time to put together yet, but we will be. And I think that these quotes really emphasize that we were trying to make personal connections along with what people were seeing. And I really think that the one-on-ones that we had, the reflection groups, really allowed people to get to know each other one-on-one and also within the group and have these experiences. And of course, I work on the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. I have for many years. So being outside on the National Mall and getting to meet the participants out there, I think was a very special thing that I wanted to share with the group. And I think that all in all, the visit was quite a success. I think hopefully that Denise will will also agree on that. So next slide. So I want to turn this back over to Denise because we are just one of 14 partners, our office, and she's the overall boss in this project. So I just wanted to let her say a few words about what's next for the project and how those of you who are interested in the project might get involved. Denise, I'm going to mute myself and you can come back.
Thank you, Betty. We just completed last week. We had 80 educators, teachers, and teaching artists from across the country who were part of the REACH program. We were on Longboat Key, and our activities were on environmental justice. And we went to the Moat Aquarium, and the initiative was Paint Goes Wild, where we learned about the wildlife, animals, and aquarium, and how to protect our sea turtles, our mammals, the ocean, the plastics that are destroying the land. And it was really an engaging experience. We gave them 3 resource books on how to do nature journaling. And some of our participants even compared, racial justice with environmental justice and just opposed those real life scenarios. It was just a breathtaking experience. I put in the question and answer in the Google Doc, Frances Bradley Villiers, who is our teaching and learning facilitator. She will be gone next week to do another residency in Flint, Michigan, and planning for next year. We're at the end of our second year, coming to the close on September 30th. And the grant requires us to engage in schools that have a high poverty index, according to the Census Bureau. And we can help you with that if you're interested in being a participant as we grow our schools according to our numbers next year. Or if you're a teaching artist and believe that you have something to contribute to our professional development as we learn to engage our teachers and teaching artists in and through the arts. It's a 5-year program. We're at the close of year 2, going into year 3, 4, and 5. And in years 3, 4, and 5, we really want to, instead of introducing the truth framework, we do believe that those teachers who are involved and have been involved are actually implementing those components of the two frameworks seamlessly into their curriculum and into their thought process as they reflect upon the students they are teaching and engaging and working to elevate in their classrooms. So I guess it's time for Q&A, right, Betty? Question and answer?
Yes, and there is a question, Denise. I don't know if you're seeing it. It's, are you familiar with the Right Brain Initiative, and is REACH collaborating with that program in any way?
No, I'm not, but I would love to learn more about it if they could give me some information, and I would definitely grab hold to that and research that to develop it into and weaving it into our program. Thank you for the recommendation and the ask.
And I see another question. Is it possible to join as a site? Oh, as a site that would be involved in the museum studies? I guess that means what's or as a site, a school site. If you could get more specific, we could probably answer the question a little bit
Yeah,
more
so
accurately.
let me talk about the museum study sites. And in our grant, we put the Montgomery experience and the Smithsonian experience as a funded experience in our grant. And we're looking to expand the site next year for Oklahoma. We want to do Wall Street and some of our sites for the American Indian in
Tulsa.
Oklahoma.
Yeah,
in Tulsa.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking at. And those are activities that were already approved of by the federal government. However, Chicago is one of our demonstration school sites. So if you're in the Chicago, Illinois area, or the Florida School Network near Sarasota, but all over the state of Florida, it doesn't matter, or Michigan, you could be a part of the Group 2 sites or our national school sites. For instance, Bradley Villiers could give you a better breakdown because it's too complicated to talk about in this setting, but there are opportunities for teachers to become either a part of a Group 1, Group 2, or Group 3 network, or if you are on this live Zoom call, if you think that you have something to contribute, because I do not know everything, and there's so much information out there from much smarter people than I am that could help contribute to the success of this program. So if you think that you have something to contribute, even as a presenter and facilitator for professional developments, sessions that will help grow the work, please contact Francis Bradley Villiers, which I have in the Google chat doc. I hope that answered the question.
Denise, I have just a question that might help some people connect. So you are building a REACH website, but right now you can get some information from the REACH program through the Paint website?
Yes, and I can put that in the chat. Let me make sure that I go find it and put the right website up at the University of South Florida. Thank you for that information.
And the idea is to build a network that many more schools around the country can get involved in, even if you're not one of the actual like demonstration schools.
Right.
Yeah. I just we have a few minutes left. I'm curious to know whether folks who are tuned in here are using arts integration in their schools. If you're doing that, and in what ways? If we'll take more questions, but that's a question I have for all of you out there. We don't know who you are because we can't see you, but you can see us, and we'd love to hear from you. We did have a question about the two questions that you posed earlier, and I think you answered that, Denise, in the...
Yes, I did. I put the questions in there. Will America's future cultural landscape represent diverse programs and include diverse populations or perspectives? And that's the center of our work. And we really want to look at the perspectives of students and the diversity that they bring in the form of whether it's race or gender or ideology or customs or heritage. And there are other spin-off programs that we have done at the Paint Center. For example, one of our community um, donors donated to the Paint Center to do a diversity, equity, and inclusion program that she has with other schools in the area. So there's spin-offs of this program based upon the work that we're doing and donors who want to contribute so vitally to this important work and to ensure that we are engaging with each other across difference.
And we forgot to tell you all that Denise and I met at the 2020 to the 2017 Smithsonian Folklife Festival, which was our 50th festival, and it featured the circus arts. And Denise has already mentioned how important the circus arts and circus culture is to Sarasota. And she and Karen Bell, a colleague, a teaching artist, came to the Smithsonian, and we ran a family activities area at the festival based on their work. So adapted what they do in the classroom to shorter lessons at the festival. And it was so wonderful that we said, we have to work together again sometime. And yeah, and involve the work of our center in this grant. So we're just really tickled pink to be working together again, and hope that some of you will let us know that you're involved in this work and that you got something out of this session that that you can use. Oh, here's another question. Is the program, I guess, limited to schools, or are, for example, after-school programs eligible to be involved? Denise?
No, they're limited to schools. They're limited to local school agencies and state school districts or charter school districts.
You could definitely use some of what the lesson plans and some of the other information that is going to be on the website in an after-school program, though, I would think.
Well, another spinoff. There was another grant that I wrote that was that I was a part of writing with our university professors, and we did an after-school program with arts integration through the Boys and Girls Club with some similar goals as well.
Oh, here's another question. I'm in Tampa, Florida, and returning to the profession after a year off. I'm curious, with the changes in legislation and you being in Sarasota, are there ways I can address these issues in a K-8 school without worrying about violating any of the new rules? We have 1 minute to answer that question, Denise.
Yes, we have several teachers in Hillsborough County. We have several teachers in Osceola County. 2 of our demonstration sites are in Manatee County. And the work is about engagement. The work is about the human experience. And the work is about working with teachers and teaching artists as they propel understandings of curriculum through the child's engagement, history, customs, and experiences. So yes, 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 you can do this work without being afraid.
I think we're just about out of time, but we want to thank our intern, Brittany Chen, who's been in the background posting the questions. And I want to say thank you to Denise and her staff at the University of South Florida for making, allowing the Smithsonian to be a part of this project. And thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you for the opportunity, and we will keep reaching across differences.